So, I know you've all been very patient and I know I'm like way over time, so I'm nearly done. Last part I want to briefly mention is this whole concept of trying to pull all of this stuff that I've just talked about together to some sort of coherent manner. You might have seen some of those symbols. Right? I mentioned chakras earlier. This staff you might have seen. And you might have also seen this whole idea of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Right? And coming back to that paradise lost thing, what they typically say is that we ate from the tree of knowledge, from the tree of right and wrong, right, to the tree of dualism. And if we want to re-enter paradise, we have to eat from the tree of life. Right? What that means is start understanding these dynamics. And if you look at the center here, many of you have seen this symbol. What it actually represents is those chakras, right? And in the very center, what that is your Sushumna, that's your primary meridian. What happens there, even if you want to just stay in the physical world and not go into the esoterics, is that electrical activity from your brain is sent through your nerves, down your spine, all the way to the rest of your body, right? Now, if you studied electricity a little bit, what you'll know is that around any sort of electrical current that flows, you'll have an electromagnetic field. Mm-hmm. Now in this case, I have an upward and downward movement along those things, so I have these overlapping magnetic fields. And funny what that looks like is this. Right? There's your two different forces, ultimately, or energetic patterns that move through your body that intersect in certain points. Just like when you take two stones and you throw them into water, and you have two wave patterns, there's certain points where they overlap and they become really strong waves, and other parts where they cancel each other out and they become really low. The same thing happens with the electrical activity that goes through your brain. And I talked about Descartes' pineal gland up there, those two wings, those are brain lobes. Those are your left and right brain lobes. But the whole idea of this approach here is to integrate all of this, understand the dynamics of this, and get to, move forward, get to a next level. I said a system of 7, right, those 7 chakras. There's a beautiful work by James Sky called Metasphere, and I apologize to him for his horrible picture that I took earlier of his website, and it's really crappy. But it's a really beautiful theory they put together because he too was baffled by this whole 7 thing. And he started looking at all these different theories. This here is taken from the Jain philosophy, which is one of the early Eastern philosophies, where they logically said, okay, I have these 7 different states. Something either is or it's not. It is and it isn't. It is inexpressible. It is and it's inexpressible. It's not and it's expressible. It is not and it's expressible. If I take those 7 things, ultimately I have all possible dimensions of the universe. And he did a very beautiful job. I highly recommend the book. I have it over here. And most of the books I talked about I have over here. And if you want to take a look at it, he looks at all these different philosophies and shows how they operate in patterns of 7. And, similar to those heart chakras here, the 7 chakras that we have in our body. Long story. So, another one that I really like, coming to 7s and 8s, is Mr. Lyrics. And actually, since Pythagoras was really interested in this whole law of octaves. And we did a lot of theory around music. Now we have our musical notes. There's 8 of them. And Pythagoras started to do some work, and there's been plenty of people doing work on 8 since. And there's an interesting thing that relates to a variety of other systems in the world, down to like the periodic element of table of elements. Even that is an 8-fold structure. Or you look at the I Ching, or you look at certain other things. Here I have a table by Leary, where he actually identified those 8 different circuits. And he called them circuits, he didn't call them chakras, and they're actually neurological in his mind. They interestingly correspond with the different attributes assigned to those different chakras. At the bottom we have the bio-survival circuit. It's a very basic, I'm just about here, I'm discovering life, I'm here, feed me. Second part is the emotion locomotion circuit, as I said earlier, and if you think back to that diagram by Mr. Young, this is our movement now. Right? This is forward movement, backward movement, this is right, this is wrong. And I have 2 dimensions, right? And I have 3 dimensions. The mental symbolic circuit. I'm starting to think, I'm starting to use my hands, I'm starting to have that combination. And then the 4th, which is the domestication circuit. That's, as of that, I've essentially combined everything that needs doing in this world. Those 4, Leary described as terrestrial circuits, and the next 5 are extraterrestrial. Right? Going back to that process of involution and evolution, where I'm starting here, and then I go into the upper world, which is the first one being the neurosomatic circuit, meaning I'm looking at my body, I'm suddenly using my body for fun and pleasure instead of just being in it. Right? And the next part where neurophysical circuit, neurogenetic circuit, and the metaphysiological circuit, those are those different higher brain states where I can actually reprogram myself. I can actually change karma, reprogram karma, meaning go into a state that is beyond my normal being, and go into this higher state, see who I am as a little biorobot, and change that. And there's various ways, from breathing techniques to, unfortunately, illegal drugs, to do that work, and you can actually reprogram all of your propensities that you have in your mental and emotional body. Again, keep in mind, this is not the truth either. Right? This is also just a map. It's Mr. Leary's map. The other thing that he did, funny enough, was to bring and connect esoteric teachings with science and psychology. Most people know Timothy Leary as the drug guru, and they don't know that he was actually a very brilliant psychologist at Harvard. Prior to that, he's actually responsible for all of modern standardized personality testing. So the first people who came up with a personality inventory. He also came up with this beautiful system where he combined all these different esoteric systems, in this case the tarot and astrology, with this model where he said, I have these 8 different circuits, and I have 3 different phases, just like a neurology has, brain cells, 3 different parts. There's the part where information comes in, and there's a cell body where it's processed, and it has the axioms where they come back out. So with that, you get this beautiful matrix of 24. And he had this in a book called The Game of Life, which I highly recommend. I think it might be out of print, but you can still find it. And it gives you a little bit of an idea. So if you think about even and you took that in the zodiac, with 4 times 3 and 4 times 3, 8 times 3 is 24, so you have 2 sets of the zodiac, this being your more terrestrial aspect of it, this being your extraterrestrial. Now if you think about your own zodiac, what this is saying, here's these different things, and where you're at doesn't mean that you're only there. It means that you have a propensity to be particularly often in that circuit versus in others. But you have all of them. Again, remember the holarchy versus the hierarchy. And what I started doing is, I got really annoyed with all these 7s and 8s, and I started drawing little models, and actually the 7 and 8 I finally reconciled because I got really insane about it. Because I thought, 7 chakras, and the heart is in the center, that's so perfect, 3 below, 3 above. How the hell, where does 8 come in, right? And there's this archetypal chakra here somehow. Well, if you take 0 and go take that up here and you go to second 0 and you put those 2 zeros together, what you get is a horizontal 8, which is ultimately infinity again. Right? So, and the same thing with the notes. If you look at the notes up there, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. It's a different note. It's another C, but it's 1 octave higher. Right? So there's a whole dynamic in terms of how those things unfold. And what I did here is just to put a couple of things together. If you think about will, right, in the first part is just the will to be. The second is the will to explore and to expand and to power. Right? And then you want to grasp things, you want to intellectually understand things, and then you want to relate to people. Right? If you think about even the whole 4 thing, and works really beautiful. If you think about initially there's nothing, right? And then there's 1, but 1 can't be by itself, because if there's 1, there has to be not 1. So there's automatically 2. And if there's 2, there actually has to be a third one that makes a distinction between 1 and 2. Right? Because otherwise nobody distinguishes that there is actually a 1 and 2. So 3, and 1 and 2, as soon as they get here, start fighting, and 3 goes, can we just all get along and come up with a theory that maybe works and think about it, and then 4 comes along and brings stability. Right? So even if you look at the shape study, I have my dot, I have my line, I have my triangle, and I have my square. My square is sort of my first solid 4-fold structure. I also put a little cross there in terms of 4 dimensions, because if you think about a cube, and Lonmilo Duquette explains that beautifully in his book on the Crowley Tarot deck. If you look at a cross, essentially that's a folding plan for a cube. So you have your basic dimensionality of the universe being those 3 dimensions, and as soon as you connect them and actually make them really a 4, so the cross also kind of signifies that. So there's some symbols that relate to it. I'm going to jump through this a little faster, just because I see you guys are getting tired. You also have your repeating patterns of body, for body here, right? Your lower one, your higher one. As I mentioned, as soon as you have those 4, you have the stability. And then unfortunately the artist comes around and says, but stability is boring, can we go back up? Right? And we go back to spirit, there must be more. Right? And then you go into a 6 where you're starting, 5 is that will to transcend, 6 is the part where you're starting to say, I am healing, I am becoming more whole again. Right? And 7 is where you're already identifying yourself with the conscious, with the creator, and you're understanding the part and parcel of that creation, and as such, also a creator. Right? So now you can start creating your own magic here. Right? And then, as I said, 8, you vanish again.